All right, welcome back to another trade recap. As you can see by the title, we caught a nice win today. If you haven't seen the trade, make sure to check out my Instagram or TikTok. That link's gonna be down in the description. But today was a really good day. I think this trade was like 1 to 2 minutes long. You can see this exact trade that I took. Obviously, I didn't take this trade all the way down to here. I think I took it to this blue line for like a 1.5 risk to reward, 1.4, something around there. If you don't know how I trade supply and demand, supply and demand, supply and demand. That's just my bread and butter. That's what I find to be the most simple, the most effective strategy. I believe all strategies work, but obviously you have to find exactly what works for you. And I found that supply and demand works for me. So exactly what I wait for is 9:30 a.m. New York session open. I think it opened up here. I thought we were gonna get buying pressure, but after this buying candle, we instantly got selling pressure. And I was just waiting for a breaker structure, and this was the structure that I was looking for to break first. So you can see that we have this structure broken to the downside. Then now I'm just waiting for a supply to be created after breaking that structure. We had a couple of buying candles here, but the one that broke the structure, which is this new structure. So what I was looking for first was this structure to be broken to confirm that we're going in the downward direction. And then once we get that first confirmation, now I'm just waiting for a structure to be broken again and create a supply. So after we broke this low right here, this is the supply that was created, this buying candle followed by this selling pressure. It broke structure with this selling candle. We can see it slightly broke structure, and that's all I'm looking for. I'm just looking for it to close below the most recent structure. I don't want to see the wicks. I need it to close below, and we have this closure just slightly. I still take those trades. We tapped into the supply first before I got in, so we tapped into here, but then we started getting selling pressure, and then we went back up, and that's when I took my entry because I was like, okay, we're still getting selling pressure, and then we pulled back into the supply. So I'm gonna just get in, and I'm gonna trust this supply because one thing that I know is that we just broke all-time highs. So if we look at the daily, we broke all-time highs yesterday. So to me, that's an indication that we might start selling. I know if you think, all-time highs are being broken, then that could mean that we continue to push up. But I like to think like the opposite. Once we break all-time highs, I think that, we're going to start reversing. I don't know if we're going to continue to reverse in the near future, but I know that for right now, once we break the all-time highs, we broke it yesterday on this candle, we can start seeing selling pressure. So that's the main reason why I was confident in taking sells, even though we just broke all-time highs. I was just confident with that. So we started getting a lot of selling pressure, waited for the structure to be broken, marked out my supply, and then I took my entry once it tapped into the supply. And if we drop down to the 5-minute, this was the demand that I took my exit out. This demand right here. So this at the beginning of demand, that's where I took my exit out. We also had another demand. I think I was looking at this 15-minute, which was my second TP if I would have kept holding, but I was just okay with the profits. I just want to secure the win. I don't want to, because it could have moved back to break even. It could have done whatever. Of course, it kept moving down. Obviously, I can't tell the future, so I don't know if it's going to continue to push down, but I secured profits at that 5-minute demand, which was about like a 1.4 risk to reward, which I'm totally satisfied with. And yeah, but we kept continuing to push down. I think the level that it got to might have been on the 4-hour. Yeah, so we got close to this 4-hour demand. Today was just a bearish day. There was no buys to be taken. I guess if you caught this low right here, could possibly be a buy. But if we just look at, all the selling pressure that we had, we could just see supplies being created and it reacting off those supplies. So I'm glad that I took a sell trade. Like I said, most people probably were looking for buys because we're, at all-time highs, but I decided to take a sell. There's a couple things I probably could have done. I could have probably, taken a TP2 at this 15-minute demand, but like I said, I was just satisfied with the win. I didn't want to keep forcing the trade and try to get a bigger trade when there's a great trade right here for a 1.4 risk to reward. So that's exactly why I just took that trade. What we can see for the future, I was talking about this demand, you know, for the last couple of days. I did have a bullish bias because we did tap into this demand on the daily time frame, and then we reacted off it. We broke new highs. We didn't close above the high, so I don't see bullish pressure. Don't really have a bullish bias for, you know, the rest of the week or tomorrow, which is Friday. You can see that we have a double top right here, so we can continue to push down. But one thing I like to mention is that I don't like to do predictions on the market. One thing I just like to focus when my time is to trade. I'll take the trade. I look at higher time frames to just add a confluence with the trade that I'm gonna take in New York session, but I just don't like to make predictions. I don't like to think about what's gonna happen in the future. I don't like to think about what's gonna happen next week. Like, the market's gonna do what the market does. Any prediction that I make really truly doesn't matter. You know, the only thing that matters is when it's time to execute that I'm focused and I execute on that trade. When you're doing your pre-market analysis or you're doing your analysis in general, make sure you just have the mindset that it doesn't matter what prediction that you have of what the market's gonna do. You just have to make sure that when it's time to execute on that trade, that you're ready and you're prepared to execute on that trade. So that's one thing I could say for today. Try not to make too many predictions, because that's kind of gonna mess up your mindset, because, you know, if you're wrong about your prediction, then you have to do a whole nother analysis just to figure out what the market's gonna do next. So just be prepared for the time that it is to trade for you, and, you know, execute when it's time to execute. But yeah, all in all, today was a really good day. Today's a short trade recap. Come back tomorrow. We'll see how tomorrow goes, and then yeah, see you guys tomorrow for another trade recap.